So what is real property tax? Let's first define real properties. As you all know, properties include buildings and land. However, real properties include machineries and improvements thereof. So, real properties include buildings, land, machineries, and improvements of the previously mentioned properties. Real property taxes are the primary source of revenues for local government units. There are 3 basic steps you need to remember for real property taxes. The first step is classification, the second is assessment, and the third is collection. In classification, you need to find out the type of property to be taxed. Different properties according to function have their own corresponding assessment level. If your property, for example, is a residential property, the corresponding assessment level is lower compared to commercial property. The different classification of real properties are as follows. Residential land refers to land used for habitation. Agricultural land refers to land for the planting of trees, raising of crops, livestock, and poultry, salt making, inland fishing, and other aquacultural activities. Commercial land pertains to land devoted to profit making and not classified as the other categories. Industrial land is land devoted for industrial activities such as capital investment. Mineral lands are lands in which minerals, metallic or non-metallic, exist in sufficient quality or grade to justify the necessary expenditures to extract and utilize such materials. Timberland, land devoted for growing trees for commercial use. There is also what we call special classes in real properties. These pertain to real properties that are actually directly and exclusively used for hospitals, cultural or scientific purposes. Local districts and government-owned or controlled corporations that own and use the above-mentioned real properties and that render public services in supplying and distributing water and/or generating and transmitting electric power are also classified under the same category. After we've classified our properties, the next step is appraisal and assessment. Appraisal is the act or process of determining the value of property as of a specific date for a specific purpose, while assessment is the act or process of determining the value of a property or a proportion thereof subject to tax. The appraisal and assessment of real properties will be guided as follows. Real property tax shall be appraised at its current and fair market value. That's number 1. Number 2 is real property shall be classified for assessment purposes on the basis of its actual use. And number 3, real property shall be assessed on the basis of a uniform standard value within each local government unit. And number 4, the appraisal, assessment, levy, and collection of property tax shall not be left to any private person. And number 5, the appraisal and assessment of real property shall be equitable. The classification, value, and assessment of a real property should be classified based on its actual use, regardless of its location, owner, and user. For the assessment, a property tax roll or schedule is needed. A property tax roll or assessment roll is a listing of all taxable and tax-exempt real properties in the name of the owner. When reading about real property tax, you are bound to come across the word ad valorem tax. The phrase ad valorem is Latin for according to value. In the case of municipal property taxes, property owners have their property assessed on a periodic basis by a public tax assessor. But the question now is, who makes the property tax rule? By default, it is the duty of the person, natural or judicial, owning the real property or his authorized representative to prepare and file with the provincial or municipal assessor the sworn statement declaring the true value of all his real properties using current and fair market value. This is prepared once every 3 years. In the event that the owner or person responsible for the real properties was unable to prepare the necessary documents for assessment within the time required, the provincial, city, or municipal assessor shall himself declare the property in the name of the defaulting owner. So how do we compute for the real property taxes? First, you need to know about assessment levels. An assessment level is the percentage applied to the fair market value to determine the taxation of the property. Here are the different assessment levels per type of classification. On lands, residential and timberland properties have the lowest assessment level, and commercial, industrial, and mineral properties have the highest assessment levels at 50%. On buildings and other structures. Now that we've discussed the different assessment levels, we now apply it on our formula for the computation of our real property tax. The formula is market value multiplied by the assessment level. The product is what we call the assessed value. We then multiply the assessed value by the tax rate. The tax rate is 2% here in Metro Manila and 1% in the provinces. The amount we get after we multiply the assessed value with the tax rate is our real property tax due. Okay, now here's a quick question. What if the taxpayer does not agree with the assessment done on his property by the municipal assessor? Well, he can in fact file a petition to the LBAA, Local Board of Assessment Appeals. If he is still not satisfied with their decision, he can go to the CBAA, Central Board of Assessment Appeals. He can do so within 30 days after the decision is made by the LBAA. So, before we close our discussion on assessment, we must also talk about special assessment. The local government has the power to impose special levies on real properties. The logic is that public improvements benefit everyone in that area, and thus the local government can ask for more money equivalent to the benefits that citizens in that locality will receive from it. There are 3 special levies the LGU is authorized to use. First is additional levy in real property for the Special Educational Fund, or SEF. The SEF is a pool of funds to be used for the creation of classrooms, purchase of books, equipment and other materials, salaries of teachers and personnel, government scholarship grants, and the like. The government can enforce a 1% annual tax on the assessed value of the property, in addition to the real property tax to be collected. Second is additional ad valorem tax on idle lands. The government may impose an additional annual tax of at most 5% of the assessed real property value. This is aside from the already imposed real property tax. Idle lands include agricultural lands with usable but unused land of at least 1 hectare, and other lands which are not agricultural with half of its area, at least 1,000 square meters, remain unused. Third is special levy by local government units. Special levies may be enacted by the local government on real properties and infrastructure improvements within its jurisdiction, provided that this levy will not exceed 60% of the total cost of these improvements, including the cost of acquiring the said properties and any properties connected to them. Those properties exempted from real property tax will be exempted from special levies as well. As mentioned, real property, sometimes called real estate, is to be taxed in the Republic of the Philippines. According to the law, everyone from provinces, cities, and municipalities is required to pay real property tax through an annual ad valorem unless specifically exempted. The locations are specified because the rates vary depending on the location of the said taxpayer. It should be organized and uniformed by the different government sectors of each area. Below are the 2 rates that should be followed in terms of real property taxes. In the case of a province, at the rate not exceeding 1% of the assessed value of real property, and in the case of a city or a municipality within the metropolitan Manila area, at the rate not exceeding 2% of the assessed value of real property. If you recall, we've said that real property tax is the main source of revenue for LGUs. So who pays for the taxes placed on real properties owned by the government? The answer is no one. The government doesn't tax itself. Here are some other exemptions from real property taxes. Number 1. Non-profit cemeteries or burial grounds. The dead can't pay for themselves. Number 2. Charitable institutions, churches, personages or convents, mosques, and all land, buildings, and improvements actually directly and exclusively used for religious or charitable purposes. Number 3. Real property in any one city or municipality belonging to a single owner, the entire assessed valuation of which is not excess of 500 pesos. Number 4. Land acquired by grant, purchase, or lease from the public domain for conversion into dairy farms for a period of 5 years from the time of such conversion, and machinery of a new and preferred industry as certified by the Board of Investments used or operated for industrial, agricultural, manufacturing, or mining purposes. Number 5. Perennial trees and plants of economic value except where the land upon which they grow is planted principally to such growth. And number 6. Real property exempt under other laws. The final step is collection. As mentioned earlier, the municipal treasurer is in charge of collecting real property tax. He can, however, select a barangay treasurer to collect as a deputy in that barangay. In Quezon City, for example, in the 2005 administration, barangays were in charge of tax collection. So much more that they were the most visible representation of city government. The provincial, city, or municipal assessor shall prepare and submit to the treasurer of the local government unit the assessed roll on or before December 31st of each year. But what happens when taxpayers fail to pay within the time allotted? Taxpayers who fail to comply with the previous year's delinquencies, interests, and penalties relative to the real property taxes shall deal with these first before paying for the current period. If so, the basic real property tax together with additional tax for Special Education Fund or SEF without any interest can be paid in either lump sum or 4 equal installments, which are on or before March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, and December 31st. A tax discount not more than 20% of the annual tax due will be granted by the Sanggunian if the taxpayer complies with the basic real property tax and additional tax for SEF payments in advance. In the case the taxpayer has complaints on the illegal or erroneous tax payment of real property tax, he or she must first pay the tax and then the treasurer who is concerned shall annotate paid under protest on the tax receipts before the protest will be entertained. The taxpayer is allowed to file a written claim for refund or credit for taxes and interests to the provincial, city, or municipal treasurer only in the border of Metro Manila area within 30 days from the payment. Municipal treasurer shall be the one deciding on the protest within 60 days upon receipt. Once the protest has been decided in favor of the taxpayer, the amount or portion of the tax protested shall be refunded or shall be credited against the existing or the future tax liability. However, if the protest is denied or is decided beyond the 60-day period, the protestant may forward to the local Board of Assessment Appeals, otherwise to Central Board of Assessment Appeals. Under Section 254 of Republic Act No. 7160, the Local Government Code of 1991, the provincial, city, or municipal treasurer is charged to enforce the collection of delinquent taxes when the real property tax due for a calendar year and previous years or installment thereof has become delinquent with respect to a property owner, and for this purpose is empowered to resort to any of the following remedies to satisfy taxes, penalties, and costs including Number 1. Seizure or distraint of personal property of the taxpayer and sale thereof of public auction. Number 2. File civil suit with the proper court. And number 3. Levy on real property and sale of delinquent property or a usable portion thereof at public auction. So basically, that's what you need to know about real property taxes.